Page 6 now. The polarizing president, Barack Obama, is the most divisive president in U.S. history. From race relations to politics to income, the 44th president has been the great disunifier. During his 6 years in office, 79% of Democrats on average have approved of the job he's doing. That's compared to only 9% of Republicans. The current overall approval rating for Obama now stands at 45%, 50% disapprove. Of course, Obama has excuses about polarizing America. He blames everything and everyone but himself.
The balkanization of the media means that we just don't have a common place where we get common facts and a common worldview the way we did 20, 30 years ago, and that just keeps on accelerating. Technology, which brings the world to us, also allows us to narrow our point of view. That's contributed to it. Gerrymandering contributes to it. And a lot of it has to do with just unlimited money. There have been periods in the past where we've been pretty polarized. I think there just wasn't polling around. The one thing that we could change without a constitutional amendment that would make a difference here would be the elimination of the routine use of the filibuster in the Senate. Because I think that does, in an era in which the parties are more polarized, almost ensure greater gridlock.
Does he sound like a constitutional scholar to you? Obama hates the Constitution. Do away with the filibuster? This guy is a hardcore, radical, anti-American values ideologue. Need more proof? Joining me now, author, speaker, strategic consultant, and Daily Ledger contributor, T.J. O'Hara. T.J., dictators, I'm sorry, but I'm going to use this word in conjunction with Barack Obama, they just do. They don't consult. They don't ask other people's opinion. They just stick to their agenda, their ideology, and they just do. And it appears Barack Obama is doing that on multiple levels.
Well, I think you're being so harsh, just given the fact that at the State of the Union, when he announced his community college plan, which is only $60 billion of taxpayer money, which we don't have a funding resource for at this point in time, it turns out that he didn't consult with anyone. He didn't consult with anybody in the community college sector. He didn't consult with any of the experts on the Hill. He simply took it upon himself to give out free community college. So I guess free phones worked and free healthcare worked, and maybe he's just expanding the demographic. But when you look at this, we shouldn't be surprised. He's almost self-professed to be the smartest guy in the world, and if you looked at his college transcripts, you'd have evidence of that. Oh, okay. Well, that's a bad example.
No, we don't have
that's
those
a bad
guys.
Example. But when you really look at it, think about the ego that's involved. This is a person who wrote his first autobiography at the age of 34, his second one by the age of 45. You and I ought to be working on our fourth or fifth.
Absolutely, although I'm not. I think we ought to have free refrigerators for all Americans, by the way. I think the refrigerator is very important, more important than health care. But that's another topic. We have Barack Obama and we have Susan Rice coming out saying that the Islamic State is not an existential threat to this country. To me, that's like Kim Kardashian telling me how to balance my budget. It just doesn't quite make sense anymore.
Well, I think it's just a favored new term. They trot out things like this every now and then. So existential threat, I think, is being offered on the basis that people won't take the time to actually look it up. I did, and interestingly enough, terrorists are listed as an existential threat in some of the definitions that you find online.
No kidding.
So, when you look at this and you've got Susan Wright of Benghazi fame and the president, and then throw John Kerry into the mix, you've got three people who are almost on a par of credibility with Brian Williams. But what I found to be most fascinating is when you look at the president, you listen to the president also made one of my favorite statements the other day. He said, when I look at ISIL, it has no governing strategy. Newsflash, Mr. President, when we look at your administration, it has no governing strategy.
See, I think he's wrong. I think Islamic State does have a strategy. Unfortunately, it runs counter to our peace and freedom in this country. Now, Ted Cruz, a potential candidate for President of the United States, the media, of course, wants to pile on him often and early. And it's so funny to hear the left, when they talk about somebody on the right, being not ethnic enough.
Well, it was funny. New York Times authored an op-ed piece, or allowed an op-ed piece to appear, and it basically accused him of not being Hispanic enough. I guess he doesn't speak fluent Spanish, and it questioned him as not being someone who started life in Cuba, coming to the United States and offering himself up as a Cuban American. Now, you know, One American News has a great spot that it does with Teddy Roosevelt, where he says there are no such things as Cuban Americans or any other type of Americans. You're either American or you're not. And wouldn't it be great if we had our political leadership focus on that? Why should it make a difference, frankly, whether or not he is considered to be a member of a Latino community or not? It should just be, does he author sound advice? Now, this was piling on week for Ted Cruz because Rick Perry jumped into the fray too and said that the country was ready to just uniformly reject young senators who had demonstrated failed policies. Now, to Cruz's credit, he was very polite, and on a State of the Union this Sunday, he mentioned that he was going to take the high road. Or he didn't say it. The host said that he was taking the high road because he said, I like Rick Perry, and I think Rick did a great job as governor of Texas. Wouldn't you love for just once, when they get into this type of bickering, for him to come back and say something like, hey, Rick, nice glasses. Have you learned to count to 5 yet?
Well, I think they ought to settle it like real Texans would. The IRS is now apparently going by this refrain. You must hire a tax cheat in order to find a tax cheat, I guess.
Well, apparently so. They have recently hired back a lot of people who had been let go by the IRS. It's tax time, so I guess they're looking for a knowledge base. But they've brought back a wide variety of individuals who have been terminated in the past for tax fraud or failure to file taxes, or for abusing access to people's records. And what is so amazing is that they have the chutzpah to come back and say, well, only 20% of the people that we hire have proven to be recidivists.
Oh.
So if they hire 100, 20% of them are going to commit tax fraud, abuse the system, and so forth. I mean, it's almost ludicrous. But I think the only telling thing that they really look for is, are the people willing and committed to aggressively pursue any type of a filing that has the words Tea Party or Patriot or Constitution associated with it?
Well, for that, they're going to have to bring back Lois Lerner, let's face it.